Who's into decentralized AI? Anybody up there? All right. Who is buying Tau? Anybody buying Tau? Anybody? No? That's great. Nobody's buying Tau in this room? Come on. This is great. Do you know the fact that nobody is buying Tau is really exciting? That means that everybody's going to be buying Tau tomorrow, right? So I think that the first time that I saw Tau, I saw the token and it was at like $250. And I was like, how do I short this thing? How do I short Tau? And then I was like, hold on a second. This thing should not be shorted. It's going to be $1 million one day. And the more I started studying it and the more I started looking at it, I thought this is the coolest thing that I've seen in 20 years. Like literally, I think that Tau and the subnets that are on Tau is probably the biggest opportunity that exists today in crypto. What do you guys think?
It's what, 75x loss.
There you go. So if you haven't looked at Tau at all, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background, right? So Tau is a platform that allows for decentralized AI to be built on top of it. All of these gentlemen are involved in the business of the infrastructure of the things that are launched in subnets underneath Tau. Each of the subnets have different functions that they provide into the ecosystem. So right now, there's a certain number of subnets that have been started on Tau. In a year from now, there's going to be a multiple of those projects that are started on Tau. Hopefully, we'll get WoW. We'll have a subnet on there. What does it cost now to start a subnet on Tau? Around $1 million?
The 350 Tau at $350.
Right. So that's close enough to
between 500 and 350. It's dynamically priced.
All right, great. So Tau itself provides for an opportunity of all these subnets to participate in earning Tau. So you can earn Tau by being a subnet. You're competing with all of the other subnets to be the most popular subnet, and other people have to agree with you that your subnet is the most popular subnet by staking into your particular subnet. It's a very competitive environment, but the one that everybody agrees is the best one is the winner of the most distributions. 21 million Tau will only be distributed forever, just like Bitcoin. It has a halving that happens. So it is, they're not going to be selling a bunch of tokens out into the marketplace, and it's going to constantly be cut out. So just a little bit of a background. If you didn't know about it, it is very exciting. You should study it, look at it. All of these gentlemen are involved in the ecosystem that is driving the platform. So I think really the first thing we should do is you guys introduce yourselves, tell everybody what you're doing, how you got involved in Tau, and just what your service and your subnet is doing, or your validator, or the piece that you're involved in.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So I'm Colin, the co-founder of Iptrix Labs, and we founded Omron, which is subnet 2 on BitTensor. About a year ago, actually, it was TOKEN2049. Last year, it was the first route that we had registered. And what Omron does is it focuses on AI verification. So everyone here has used AI at some point in time. But on the other side of these model providers, you really have no idea what's going on. You have no idea if you're using, let's say, ChatGPT version 4.0, which version it is. These things change all the time. So what we're able to do is actually lock down the AI model and provide evidence that you're using this exact version. And if you think about the application of this, it really applies all across Web3. There's, if you're doing trading bots, for example, you want to know that it's actually a AI agent on the other side or an AI model on the other side, not some guy with a spreadsheet or something else going on, so then you were nefarious. So you're able to get that in a trustless fashion.
Interesting. So when people are on shoots and they're calling that specific LLM, you can validate.
Exactly. That's the exact concept. Is it hasn't changed, it hasn't been modified. There's no middleman that's changing the model or maybe injecting things into it, modifying the behavior.
Interesting. And how has it grown?
It's been incredible. So as you know, there's a lot of different ways of accomplishing that and building technology around that. Since we launched, we've actually seen a 10x increase in the performance of the underlying technology. So different recruiting systems and having miners for heat in this open participation fashion. It's really something that hasn't been done anywhere else.
So miners are calling you. So the miners are calling you before, like as people are looking to use the LLM on the mining side, they're actually calling you to validate that.
Exactly. The other types of models as well. We actually do an AI agent that plays Doom, and every single frame of that is verified. So the actual 640 by 480 pixel frame from a game goes right into this AI agent. It figures out where forwards, backwards, what key to press on the keyboard, and then takes that step and then just increments you with those truths. Kind of an experiment. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Granis. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Contango Digital Assets.
Mike, put your mic up a little bit more because I hear.
Yeah, so we started off as a venture capital firm. We invest specifically at the intersection of blockchain and AI. And so we have a portfolio of companies that build specifically in that intersection. We found BitTensor in summer of 2023 and figured it was a great opportunity, not just to invest, but also to build in the ecosystem. And so we really wanted to roll up our sleeves and start building. We launched a subsidiary company called Contango Labs. And really what Contango Labs does is shepherd our portfolio companies into BitTensor. So we have BitTensor native developers on our team. We joint venture with those teams and build subnets. So we've built 5 subnets that are live on BitTensor mainnet right now. We also have a mining operation, and we run one of the largest validators on the ecosystem, which is Roundtable 21. I think we're fifth or sixth largest at the moment. So our goal as a company is obviously to accumulate Tau, but really to vertically integrate the ecosystem. There's 3 participants. There are subnet owners, validators, and miners. And our goal is to kind of touch each piece of that business and vertically integrate to accumulate Tau in kind of a de-risked way.
And
yeah, thanks, Chris. So my name is Ben James.
I'm third up here.
Yeah, my name is Ben James. I'm the founder of 404. We are one of the BitTensor subnets. So in Mike's explanation, we're a subnet owner in this construct. I think I really like that intro to BitTensor because it's one of these projects where you can start to go down a bit of a rabbit hole here. There's first the construct of what is Tau, what is BitTensor, how does an adversarial system help further something like decentralized AI. You can start to go down the open source narrative around it. How does open source encourage building within this particular space? And then you can go down the route of individual subnets. So you start looking at what are all of these different subnets doing because they're very different. Like the subnet that Colin is building really is completely different than what we are doing. We're doing 3D model generation. So we stereotypically work with really large game developers, film companies. I actually come from a Web 2 background. So I started the company working with large AAA game developers, which means kind of the highest quality of virtual world builders. And then we started to look at this idea of could you democratize content creation in some way? So there are so many very talented and creative people that want to build virtual worlds, whether it's for gaming, whether it's for film, whether it's for digital twins to run simulations. And they don't have the necessary skill set. They don't know how to model. They don't know how to texture. And so we started working with this premise on BitTensor. We started working within an environment where, as a subnet owner, what we have to do is we have to determine how do you evaluate 3D models in real time to determine what is the highest quality model. How do you incentivize miners to go and build on top of state-of-the-art models? And yeah, for me, it's been a very interesting experience building that because the whole premise of building a subnet on BitTensor is it's an adversarial system. So there is one step back where you would say you are on the same team as your validators and your miners to deliver the best commodity possible to your end users. But ultimately, the way you do that is through having miners compete against each other to run those HODLs. And that means inherently people are looking for exploits. People are looking for ways to game the system. And your job as a subnet owner is how do you make a foolproof system that really encourages innovation in incentive design? So for me, it's been a very, very exciting opportunity, and I think we've grown quite substantially there. So we're actually one of the top performing subnets at the moment.
So, Mike, you did a great job explaining kind of the infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about, the staking process, where people can stake, a little bit about the alpha token, and how they could stake not only to the root, but also to the alpha token as well?
Yeah. And if I may, because you did a great job introducing BitTensor as well, and I'd like to maybe just double click on one of the points that you made, which is the correlation to Bitcoin. It's more than just the 21 million 4-year halving cycle and the kind of same monetary policy. BitTensor really stands on the shoulders of Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is Bitcoin is the fastest growing supercomputer on Earth. It's got 500 times larger, more compute capacity than the second largest supercomputer. And it's done that all in 15 years. And so the real unlock or aha moment was that distributed compute scales a lot faster than centralized compute. And so what the founders of BitTensor said was, hey, what if we can build a similar type network that attracts a bunch of compute, but as opposed to it just mining SHA-256, which inherently doesn't have any value to the real world, the value is that it secures the network, but it's not doing anything real other than solving complex math problems. And so what BitTensor said was, hey, what if we can generate this network of tons of compute and allocate all of that compute not just to proof of work, but proof of useful work. So proof of useful work is doing things like 3D image generation or inference verification or price predictions or anything that you could throw a bunch of compute at can be done on BitTensor. And to your point, Chris, as I said, there's 3 core participants in the ecosystem, and you can kind of think of the ecosystem like a school. So the entire network is the school. There are different classrooms that are like different subnets where you would learn different subjects. That classroom has a teacher, which is the validator that marks the work of the students. And you can think of the miners as the students in the classroom that are producing work and giving it into the teacher to then validate and score. The validator will choose the best and rank order the best to the worst responses. The best miner gets paid the most. The worst miner gets booted out, and then the next miner comes in. So that's where this Darwinistic competition comes from, where miners continue to improve and force this improvement on each other. Because if you don't, you're going to get kicked out of the network, and you're naturally incentivized to try and be the best because you want to make the most tau or the most tokens in distributions. So as a user, you can own tau. You can stake that tau to a validator. And then you can also use that tau to purchase the subnet tokens of any of the 100 subnets that are on the network. The thing is, they're not like ERC20 tokens. They're actually more like Bitcoin and tau themselves. All the subnet tokens have 21 million halving schedules and the same kind of supply economics that Bitcoin and tau do. So it's much more of a fair launch and much more of a kind of distributed ecosystem in that sense, and not kind of some of the Ponzi games that we've seen in other crypto spaces in the past.
Colin, in your ecosystem, are you solving explain a little bit of the problem that you're solving so that people can understand how you play into that ecosystem?
Yeah, for sure. I think before I do that, I want to draw one more parallel line to Bitcoin. What happens with a blocked reward, right? So in Bitcoin, the blocked reward goes to the node that's actually mined the block. In BitTensor, it's a little different. What we actually do is every block, the reward goes proportionally to all the network participants. And then the problem becomes, how do you do that in a fair, equitable manner? And BitTensor is really trying to take a different approach to do this based on the allocation of alpha tokens and based on how the network has decided these things are valued relative to each other. And if you think about what that rule is, how do you allocate capital? It kind of reminds me of the whole government, right? There's a certain amount of capital that the government has to decide where does it go, how's it going to be spent, how's it going to be allocated to citizens, to the public. is that just trying to answer that same question with block reward, which I think is something no crypto network has attempted to solve yet, and something super interesting.
So how are the yeah, it's a very competitive environment. So how are the miners cheating, and what are they doing to, gain the best position? Like, what are you guys seeing as something that the miners are doing? You're in the mining, right?
Yeah, I can answer that on our subnet. So miners are doing crazy things. They're rewriting an entire code base from Python to Rust. They're deploying custom FPGAs to run circuits on custom hardware, and going to all of the software dependencies and ripping them apart, trying to find issues, deleting code that doesn't make any sense that they don't be for their operation. That's just the hard step by it. What we've seen in others is they're figuring out where the validators are located in the world, and red tick servers co-located beside it, so that the ping is, they say 10 milliseconds, right? It's crazy stuff that's going on. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, BitTensor is a naturally adversarial network, like Ben mentioned, and so miners will always try to do what they can to find an edge, and whether that means running, the best LLMs, or whether that means kind of miner relaying or cheating off of validator answers, there are so many different ways that the system can be gamed, and it's really the job of the subnet owners to create an incentive mechanism that is impervious to gaming. And so that's the real complex I like to think that subnet ownership is kind of like trying to sustain nuclear reaction or nuclear plasma, where there's all these escape vectors and it's always trying to escape this plasma. And what you're trying to do is create the perfect competition that keeps all these escape vectors in check when everybody else is trying to game the system. And so it's a very difficult job that these guys have to create an incentive mechanism that doesn't incentivize perverse incentives.
And at the same time, when it works really well. I mean, I could give a very simple example, maybe on our subnet, because we're very visual. When we first launched the subnet, what we realized, so miners on our subnet generate 3D models. So if a user asked somebody to generate a character, a miner would generate a cube with 6 images of a character on it, because they realized, if you take these different images from a computer vision perspective, it looks like a character. And so therefore you could fool the incentive design system in this early stage to think that this was an accurate 3D model without expending a lot of compute. But then, as we've sort of had this evolution of our validation mechanism over time and introduce new, more complex things like visual language models to come in and describe the results, look at them from different angles, etc. What you see is that actually now what you're really incentivizing is people to build on top of state-of-the-art models. So it's no longer sufficient. It's definitely no longer sufficient just to make a cube. It's no longer sufficient just to go to the leading open source repository and generate models from that. You actually need to have some form of AI or ML knowledge to actually do things that improve upon open source state-of-the-art models in order to be competitive and in order to win on the subnet. And that is really impressive, because that means that at any given time, the models being generated on our subnet are at or above state-of-the-art anywhere in the world. And I think especially in AI, especially in 3D AI, where the evolution of the landscape is so rapid and developing so quickly, this incentive design is far more powerful than any single model would be and will be.
How does it work on the validators when they're giving off yield, right, to trying to get you to stake to the validator inside the sub, where those rewards are coming from just the ecosystem itself, and then you guys are issuing in that so they're diluting themselves, right? So they're competing to try to get more people to stake. You can talk a little bit about that.
There is validator competitions as well. Like there are adversarial in some aspects as well, and they're competing for the highest APY on every subnet. There's a different talents net to run, different hardware at the setup. Ours is relatively simple. That's something that Advanced is much more complicated than that. If, for example, Shoes, the infrastructure that's right there, it's actually so complicated that they have to run a single validator by subnet owners and have others run this like other validator with has lower spec, just given how complex it is. and the amount of volume and transactions that they process. So validators also have this competition between each other to keep their validation services to the highest standard possible to make it at a UI, to drive stapers and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean, like Colin mentioned, there are 100 different subnets, and each different subnet has different staking, has different compute requirements and different, validation requirements. And so it's very much like running 100 different validators to run full infrastructure on the BitTensor network. But validators are ranked based on what's called vTrust, and vTrust is essentially a score that shows how in consensus a validator's scores, or I guess grading of the students, is with the rest of the network. And so there's an element of competition, but there's also an element of collaboration with validators, because you want to make sure that you're coming to the same consensus that the rest of the network is coming to. And when somebody stakes tokens to you, there's a 18% take that goes to the validator. However, a lot of validators, including ourselves, have taken that take down as almost a race to the bottom, because it's a competition. The lower you take, the more your delegators make. And so there's kind of this this movement of capital in a bit of a mercenary way amongst the ecosystem to try and always find the best APY.
So I think we could talk hours about this, which I hope, we can continue after this to have a very and much longer conversation. But what do you think, and I'll pose this to all you guys, what do you think for the next 12 months is your prediction about what's going to happen on the ecosystem? What are you the most excited about? Or maybe those are two different questions. So,
I mean, I think for me, it's a bit one and the same. I think that BitTensor right now, as evinced by your intro and this panel, is something that is inherently a little bit difficult to understand. There are sort of multiple levels, multiple different types of actors, and a strange but very effective relationship between collaboration and competition happening across each of these scales. And as a result, I think it is one of these, as you mentioned, these projects that, in my opinion, there is no more exciting project in all of crypto at this moment. You see it when you go to events with subnet owners and miners and validators. Everybody is very authentically interested in what we're building. There's a lot of principles of fair launch that have been employed throughout the different stages here. And so for me, I think what I'm most excited about and looking forward to is, as this huge ecosystem and opportunity becomes more understandable, digestible, and accessible to a larger group of people, I think it will really benefit from these kind of economies of scale. I'm so excited to see the number of subnets grow, the number of different participants and actors coming into this ecosystem. I think you already see incredibly smart and talented AI engineers coming into this ecosystem. And so I that's what I'm most excited about, is kind of the growth I think that we're going to see from the ecosystem as a whole in the next 12 months.
how many subnets at the end of this year, end of 25?
I would like 1,000. I think that would be really remarkable.
That'd be great.
I think on average we've seen about a subnet every 2 days. So, I mean, that can give you some estimation. But I think from my perspective, right now the world we live in BitTensor is somewhat siloed still. Like, each subnet runs its own infrastructure, runs its own incentive mechanism, and does something very specific, which is build this digital commodity, whether that's verified inference, whether that's 3D image generation or price predictions or whatever other subnets are doing. But what I'm really excited for is to see more cross-subnet collaboration and see that collaboration get easier, because where I think we are is in the evolution of BitTensor is very much in this single-celled organism type of phase, where we have all these subnets that are producing really, really valuable digital commodities, but they haven't started to, in many cases, build on each other, collaborate with each other. And once we have this kind of orchestration layer of agents that are pulling digital commodities from 10, 15, 20, 100 subnets, then we're really going to see the value of what's being produced here, because those agents are what retail can touch and feel. And it's the front ends that these guys are building that do something very specific and very important in the world of AI. But when that can be meshed with the work that's being done by hundreds of other teams, I think that's going to be very exciting as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far here. And for me, it's really we're waiting for this moment of a breakout subnet, something that really attracts the attention from Web 2, from Web 3, and then brings that attention back to BitTensor. Right? There's maybe an argument to be made that that's already happened by a few subnets, but I'm not the person to officially declare that this is the day of reckoning or that the Hatrati. We're at 100 subnets. I think we went a little faster than expected to get from 64 in mid-Feb to 100, and the quality of new subnets, portfolio teams, are just like the mergers and acquisitions I've seen in the last 90 days has been in this market, I think, quite fascinating. And I've been talking with a lot of miners who really see mining as this, no longer as a hobby. They're actually figuring out, how do I leave my job? How can I get the confidence that this is going to be something that's sustainable to make the leap and become a full-time miner? And I'm hearing that more and more often, that guys are giving their notice. So talking to 2 miners yesterday, one of them is actively trying to find his replacement as job so he can become a mine on BitTensor. Something that excites me quite a bit.
And so, do you think there's going to be a little less than 1,000 now, because there was such a big jump up to where we are today?
I know that I don't know mathematically that 1,000 is possible, man. I don't know, but like if the registration fees were being paid, then sure, right? So I say 2,000.
All right, so even at the low end, that's a 10 times growth, right? That's pretty good. That's a lot of inventory out of the market.
And by the way, another corollary to Bitcoin, Bitcoin, when it started, there was 50 Bitcoin being released every block, every 10 minutes. And because BitTensor is only 4 years old, there still hasn't been a halving event. So there's 7,200 Tau up for grabs every single day, roughly $5 million if I don't know, maybe something along those lines. $5 million a day in emissions and rewards up for grabs to anybody in the ecosystem that is producing value. And so,
but they're getting that through mining the subnets.
Which validating and subnet ownership.
Yeah. So you have to take the discern, but understand you have to have the alpha token. Alpha token goes into Tau.
Correct. But what I'm saying is there's a ton of value to be had right now because we haven't even had a halving yet. It's still very early in the ecosystem, and those that are building are really the ones that are, in my opinion, building wealth for the long term.
All right, so who's interested in this now? Does this sound interesting to you guys? So it's not financial advice, but buy 10,000, stick it to his validator, close your eyes for a little bit, and we'll come back in a couple of years and see how you're doing. But hopefully this was educational for you. Like I said, more excited about this. And I think we have a AI compute fund that we've launched. We're buying lots of compute to put into this ecosystem, and we're learning more about it every single day. So thanks for listening, and thanks for your time. And hopefully you can stick around and people can talk to you, learn a little bit more.
Cheers for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.